Classes and objects are very useful and are utilized in most modern-day high-level languages, but they can be very difficult to understand and can be quite complicated for beginners. But not to fret, because they are actually more simple than you might think, and once you have a grip of them, you'll find them very useful to use and you'll find yourself using them quite often. Classes and objects are the core of object-oriented programming, which is a big part of development and is essential specifically to development of software, games, or other things which require a lot of structures of data and functionality. Say, for example, we want to create account records, and these records would hold many different types of information, and we want to create many of these records. Object-oriented programming would come in very useful. But what is a class or object? Well, a class we could compare to a blueprint. This comparison is used quite often. A class is a set structure of attributes and functions. An object is something we create using a class. It will contain the structure of attributes from that class, which can then be assigned the values we want, as well as have for the functionality of that class. This enables us to make many variations of this class. This is useful when you want to have many of a certain thing, which has many different variables and set functionalities, but you want to avoid the messy or repeated code and want to maintain the integrity of your code, which are very important factors of professional programming. So using our example from earlier, we can create a class which represents the account record and all the information that it will hold. And then using that class, we can create many objects with attributes for that information. By utilizing classes and objects, we are applying two key processes of programming: encapsulation and normalization. Encapsulation is the process of grouping data/information and restricting access to it only to where it's required. We do this when we create a local variable inside a function, which can only be used by the function and is forgotten about when the function has exited. Normalization is the process of reducing repeated information and/or functionality, meaning structuring code in a way we do not have to repeat the same code or values repeatedly if it isn't necessary, as this can open risk to damaging the integrity of your code and data. These are very important concepts of programming which need to be taken seriously when wanting to work as a programmer or want to code for commercial purposes. Okay, let's say we want to have some characters, right, as an example, and we want to be able to speak with them. We want them to have some dialogue. Obviously we want them to have a name, and then maybe we can think of some other attributes for them to contain. So how you might do this is you might say, okay, well, let's have character 1 name. Okay, and let's name him Joe. Okay, let's have character 1 age. Okay, well, he can be 17. And then let's say, character 1 dialogue. That's not how you spell dialogue. Dialogue. Let's say, hello, my name is character 1 name. Okay, so this is functional, right? But what if we want another character? Okay, let's do the same thing again. Why don't we copy this, and then place a character 2. Okay, so now we have this where we created 2 characters, we've given them a name and an age, and then we've given them dialogue. Okay, so then we could create a function saying define init dialogue. Okay, and then we can pass through the message, and then we can just print the message. Okay, so this works, right? I can do, let's say, initialize dialogue. I'm going to do character 2 and character 1, right? Okay, so this works, right? Okay, and then we can actually run this. This is one of the things I don't like about Python. Now if we run this, there we go. And our prints message is saying all the correct things. So this works, right? This is functional. But say we want like 10 characters 20 characters, and obviously you see the issue, you can't keep copying and pasting this, right? It's not very convenient, and the integrity is kind of not there. So let's get rid of this. What I'm going to do is, I'm going to create a class, and I'm going to name this NPC. We can create what the term is attributes, right? Where we can add variables to the class, which we call attributes of the class. So we can do name, age, we can do dialogue. So we now created a class, or what you could call a blueprint. Okay, so it has a name, it has an age, and it has a dialogue. So what we can actually do is we can do person1 equals NPC. And what we've done here is we've created an object which contains these attributes and have assigned it to person1. And what we can do is we can do print person1, and then that should, if I run this, okay, yeah, there's the object, but then what we can do next is we can print, say, the name. Now this won't actually print anything because, oh, well, there's nothing in the name. How do we go about that? Well, a thing you can do with classes is you can use a function called init, which is short for initiate, which basically means when we create a new object. So what we can do is we can add parameters into this. So we can do name, age, and dialogue. This here where it says self, with object-oriented programming in Python, when you create classes, you use a reference self, and self is basically the current object. So it's a reference to itself. So what you can do is you can do self.name, which basically gets this. And then I can assign it name right here. And we can do that for the rest of them. So what we're doing here is when we make the object, when we make a new object from this class, we are getting the parameters we are passing through, and we're assigning them to the attributes we have in this object. So what we need to do now is we need to assign this a name, an age, and a dialogue. So we do, let's say Joe, which is the name, and we do the age, let's say 17, and a dialogue, which is, let's just do hello for now. Okay, so now when we run this should print out Joe. And we can do that for the rest of the attributes as well. So we can do age, and we can do dialogue. Joe, 17, hello. So we are passing through these parameters that we have set in the initialize function, and when we create the object, it runs this code. So it's assigning the name and the age and the dialogue to the according attributes inside of this class. Okay, so now we've created a new object and assigned it to another variable. So we now have two NPC objects. And if we copy this, paste it, there we go. So now it should, there you go, Jeff, 20, hello, my name is Jeff. Okay, so now we've got this working, but say, you know, we have like multiple person objects, we don't want to keep doing this over and over again, right? So what we can do is, we can create a function inside of the class. We can do define greeting. And you'll notice when you're creating functions inside of a class, you always have to reference self. because referencing self allows you to access the attributes inside of the object. So if I want to use name, age, or dialogue, I have to use self. So now what we can do inside of this, we can say print self.dialog, which goes into itself and grabs the dialogue. So now what we can do is we can grab person1 and we can call greeting. And so now this should say the dialogue inside of person1, which should be hello. There you go. Now if you want to add more detail to this, what we can do, now we can create a new function. Let's name this speak. And then what this can be is we can print out self.dialog. Pretty simple. So then we can do person1.speak. And then this should print out the dialogue. Yep, so we can change the dialogue to be I am good at programming. There you go. And so then you can expand this from there, and so when you get a grip of this concept of creating almost structures of data, or like attributes and functions, it gives you a lot more flexibility of what you can do, and lets you do a lot more on a bigger scale, and it lets you do it in a much easier way.